Hey, welcome to another. This is going to be a training game video where I actually play a game rather than just practicing puzzles. And practicing puzzles is obviously very important. It gets you familiar with different tactical patterns, and hopefully you can take those into your games. But ultimately, a game is more than just tactics. It's also about long-term strategic decisions, and there's a certain flow to a game that you don't have when you do individual tactics and tactical puzzles, where every puzzle is potentially very different than the previous one. Of course, in a game, every single move flows onto the next move. And so there is a different vibe to games. And so it is something in and of itself that needs to be practiced, not just practicing puzzles. It's not sufficient. So as you can see, I'm waiting here to pair with someone for a game that's going to last for quite some time potentially. Each side is going to have 45 minutes for their side of the game. In addition, every single move that you make, you get an extra 45 seconds. So we'll both start with 45 minutes on the clock. After I play the first move, I'll have 45 minutes and approximately 45 seconds. And then that clock will start, his clock will start counting. So basically my goals for this game is to play a solid game of chess, really try to play at my best level, which, realistically is probably around 17 or 1800. That's probably about my best at the moment. So I'm going to try and do that. My goal, if I start with black and I face the move d4, I'm going to try and get into a Grunfeld position, which is out of my comfort zone, but it's something I've had a quick look at during the week because I'm trying to expand my repertoire. If I play as a white, I'm not sure what I will play. Perhaps I will play d4 myself, which I haven't done for a long time. I'm not sure. I'm going to think about that. But anyway, with that little intro, I'm going to press pause on the recording and I'll come back when I have an opponent. See you then. All right, guys. Well, I found a game. I had to change the time control to find a game. Didn't seem like anyone wanted to play a 45-45. And I did get white. It's instead just going to be a 60-minute game with no increment. And I have opted to play d4, which I haven't played for a long time. And I'm not that familiar with. I'm playing against an opponent whose rating is 1799, so essentially an 1800. And my goal really is going to be to draw, just to equalize with him. Now, of course, I should make note of the fact that I'm probably, as it is, already at least equal. So I just have to not do anything bad. Now, is this a move? I'm not particularly sure. I'm not actually too familiar with Queen's pawn openings. I know that it's very commonly played, a move like e3 blocks in the bishop. So there is a thought here in my mind to get the bishop out first. And I'm considering doing that. Potentially giving up the bishop in so doing. There is also the thought in my mind of pinning his knight, but how easy do I want to make his development? Kind of makes things a bit easy for both of us. Maybe I play knight f3 and just keep everything very solid. I'm not too sure. Not too sure. I think I'm going to do this. I like that, I'll be able to get developed as well. It's not just going to be a one-way street. So let's play that way. Now, this is possible. He can't actually play this move because, of course, he would lose his queen. Okay, this is all fair enough. Do I actually want to take this? I don't think we need to do that yet. I think we can just develop. He castles, fair enough. We could consider a move like h4. He's probably going to play a move like h6 and put the question to my bishop. When he does that, I suppose I'll take. He'll probably recapture with his knight. So everything's basically looking okay for him at present. Could take this pawn. It's one of the things I noticed, I think, in the Grunfeld that, was it the Grunfeld? I think it was. In any case, when this knight is placed on d7 and blocks the bishop, sometimes this pawn can become a little unstable. I don't necessarily have a way to play it, take advantage of it. But if I take this pawn and he takes back, would there be any sense in taking this? Not really. Not really at all. What do I want to do? Maybe a move like this so that this actually becomes a threat. Even then, it's not really a threat, however. Even then, it's not really a threat, which makes me think I should probably just continue my development. Maybe playing rook ac1 makes some sense. Maybe taking the pawn. If he takes back, I think that makes some amount of sense. I don't think it's necessarily a horrendous move. And again, I'm trying to play solid and equalize with him. I've chosen an opening I'm not too comfortable with and familiar with, the Queen's Gambit, or the Queen's Pawn, which he declined in this case. So I'm just trying to play sensible and see if we can get into a drawn endgame. Maybe I should be more ambitious. I mean, obviously I'm trying to play as well as I possibly can. And actually that's going to be the goal here. Rather than aiming for a draw, just aim to play well. Now, if he takes this way, then I would say I'd probably take the knight. And if he takes the bishop, then I would take the bishop. And if he takes back, then I can come up and take this. So I think I should take the pawn. But then he takes my knight. I take bishop, and he takes bishop. So I should definitely not take the pawn. I mean, I don't even know where that thought came from. Nevertheless, there it is. Now I pretty much know, though, that my bishop's not going to land anywhere, here or here. At least not at the moment. Which somewhat gives me permission to put my bishop here. I think that's a reasonable move to make. Again, there's no increment today, so while I don't want to rush unnecessarily, I don't want to dawdle either, because I'm not going to be able to have 45 seconds extra on each move when I need it later down the line. I've got my allocated 55 minutes and 17 seconds remaining, and that's all I'm going to have for the entire game. So I should make a decision about how I respond to h6. And there's two basic options. There's take the knight, or there's retreat to either of these squares. With the retreat moves, you have to be careful of follow-up attacks. Now, in this case, I'm seeing that if I take and he takes back, we might end up in a situation we've seen in Puzzle Streak where we can move a bishop away against a queen, but that's very speculative, and that queen is currently defended several different ways. But he is threatening to play c4, for what that's worth. So do I wish to allow him the development of his knight? If he were to take with his bishop, then this pin would be on again. So if I take, he does have to take with his knight again, because if he takes with the bishop, I play like this, and I think that would be a good thing for me. So after he takes with his knight, freeing up development possibilities for his other bishop, what would I then play? Considering that my bishop would be under attack. I guess the thought would be that you can take this knight. If he takes bishop, it's going to be with check. Then after I take, he can then recapture. And that looks okay for me, I believe. I believe that looks okay. But what if I do the move order a little bit differently? If I take this and he takes with the knight, I take this, he takes with the bishop, then I still can't take the pawn because he's not going to bring his queen down and fall for this trap. Although that's what I would be hoping for. I don't want to play hope chess, I want to play good chess. So take this, he takes the knight, then take this knight is a possibility. Because then it's possible that what he'll do is take back. And if he does take back in that circumstance, then I can come here, taking the pawn. Safe in the knowledge that he can't recapture because of check. So take, he takes, take. If he takes, take, I would expect him to take this with check, then I recapture. And his bishop is doing a good job there, actually. His bishop's doing a good job there. I could just castle, let him play c4, drop the bishop back. But if I'm going to drop the bishop back, I'd rather not put it here, because with a pawn here, what's my queen's never going to be able to come here because this square will be defended by the pawn. So I'd rather get this bishop all the way back here so that I can then put the queen here. But I don't want to put the bishop here because of obviously it blocks the rook. So that brings out the idea of playing rook ac1 right now, so that I can just meet this move with this and following it up with the queen move. That's a potential idea. Also, if rook ac1, this, I can ultimately follow it up with b3, or I could play b3 immediately. I could play b3 immediately. And then if c4, I just take. So b3 has to be an option as well, I would think. b3 is an interesting one, because if he ever develops his knight this way, b3 actually does a decent job of defending those two squares as well. So b3 comes to mind. It weakens a knight considerably. So after moves like this become possible. Then there's rook ac1. Queen can come through. Seems like it's too weakening to play b3, but I want to have concrete reasons behind what I'm thinking and doing. So obviously I want to get castled. He's castled, and that's, good for you, mate. Actually, it is good for him. But rook ac1. If he plays this and I come back, then everything's pretty solid, and I think I should be able to get castled, in the immediate follow-up. So that's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to play rook ac1, which I think is a constructive move. I think it's a constructive move. Rather than taking, I could have taken, but if I took, then it just helps him develop. He gets a tempo on my bishop. and I'm spending time helping him develop rather than spending time getting developed myself. So that's what I'm doing instead now. Okay. So I suppose his main idea with b6 is to fianchetto the bishop. And, fair enough. Fair enough. I want a castle. I'm pretty sure about that. Question is there something better I can do here? Do we still now want to consider this move? Because now if he takes back with the knight, I can just retreat the bishop all the way home. And I will be threatening then, in a certain sense, to take this and then to take this. I kind of do think I should castle first and get myself safe. I also need to be prepared in the future for his bishop on this diagonal to hit this pawn. So maybe playing something like this in the future, or otherwise maybe getting a queen over here to protect, as well as to get this battery happening, as well as to just have a big influence on this file. But I think either way, I think castles is the way to play for the moment. And I'm expecting something like h6, which maybe I should play h3 so that if I want to after h6, I can come here and then always just bring my bishop back down to this portion of the board on h2. Okay, I think I'm doing okay for the moment. I think I'm doing okay. If I were to take, he would take back. Certainly. And then if I take, he can take either way, really. He probably takes with his queen. I suppose I could then take this. 47 minutes. I don't want to take too long. It's got the whole game ahead of us. Playing against a higher rated opponent, and I want to do something good, something productive, something good. I know he wants to play this. I think castles is probably a sensible move in the absence of something better. Is he threatening anything? I don't believe he's threatening anything at the moment. I'm going to castle. Again, I'm trying to not get myself into a time-pressured situation later in the game. And in the meantime, just to play something solid. Okay. Indeed. Bishop b7 makes a lot of sense. Now I wonder about b3 because this side of the board doesn't matter so much anymore. The knight is defended by the rook. And there's also just no pin here. If you did play something like this, A, I don't really mind, but B, I can just jump the knight away. And possibly jumping the knight away is a good move anyway, just to open up the rook, just to add extra support to the pawn on d4, and to get some pieces over towards the king side, which is my ultimate goal in this game. Now he has defended this pawn again, so I think the likelihood again of any of these tricks ever working is pretty low, as it probably always is against a player like this, of this rating. So what else can I do that I would like to be able to do? Maybe again this h3 move, that could make sense. For that matter h4, but I think h3 is a bit more solid. Then I would be able to keep my bishop against, as far as I can tell, pretty much all attacks. Could either drop back there, possibly consider a sack. Okay. This move comes to mind. If he takes, I take back. He has to move his knight somewhere. Trade bishops. Big whoop. Big whoop. Now his bishop's not doing much as long as this pawn remains here, and that pawn will remain there as long as there is something here. And if he takes, well, I can take back in a variety of ways. Also, instead of h3 to make space for my bishop, I could also consider e4. e4 makes space for my bishop if I want to give it that space. e4 also strikes at this pawn. It threatens to play e5 for what that's worth. And if he takes, he's got 1, 2, 3 defenders of the square. So he actually would be able to take. And then after, say, I take back, it wouldn't be good. So that brings to mind the idea again of queen c2. Queen c2, threatening to play e4. But what I don't like about queen c2 is that he can just respond with rook c8, and then my queen feels a bit loose, being x-rayed by his rook in the event of some trades along this file and this knight needing to move away for some reason. So therefore, bringing the rook across to the e file so that it can defend e4 potentially makes sense. Rook e, threatening to play e4. Is that a potential move? It is, but then it's potentially slow as well because you can immediately attack the bishop then. I can imagine a situation where he gets his pieces to this long diagonal. He'd probably do it in that order. You might want to play this. I can prevent that by playing this. So sometimes, I've been doing this chessable course by Kramnik, who was a former world chess champion. And he says you can win games very often by just stopping whatever it is your opponent wants to do. So I'm not sure exactly what I should do here. The question that I can ask is, what does my opponent want to do? And possibly what he wants to do is develop his queen to this square. And that does bring up the idea of either putting my bishop there myself to take this square away from him, or developing my knight here to take that square away from him. I think the more sort of principled way to do it would be with bishop, because this bishop's not really doing a lot up here now. It's really not. It's not pinning anything. It's just sort of waiting to be attacked. If I play a move like this, take that square away from his queen, he can attack my bishop. That's true. And my bishop really is kind of helpless. It'll be taken, but at least then I can either open my rook or take back this way. And there could be benefit to that. Yeah, this move h3 does come to mind. Then if he does develop his queen, I can attack the queen. He can attack my bishop. Take, attacking the queen. Gets complex, whereas here I can take this square away from the queen, but he can immediately attack my knight. My knight can jump back. It's not easy to know what to do in a situation like this. I've got 41 minutes though. This is nice. If he attacks my bishop, that's the thing I don't love. Whereas it's possible that if I leave the bishop where it is, maybe he'll want to move the knight, or I can encourage him to move the knight and trade bishop for bishop. I'd rather do that, I think. If I can induce him to play a move like this, then that's potentially a weakening move for him to have to play in the long term. I'm sort of looking at h3, which itself is a weakening move to have to play though. You know, there's queenside moves. There definitely are queenside moves to consider. There are other knight maneuvers. But am I willing to part with the dark squared bishop? I think that's the question that I need to answer at this junction. Because unless I make a space for it right now, the bishop is going to get traded for a knight. And if the bishop's going to get traded for a knight, do I want to wait or do I just want to do it? He takes back in one way or another. Then what? Then I guess I continue with a few more trades, potentially. Do I want to play a move like this? Queen b3. Probably not. I don't want to get the queen and the bishop forked. Do I want to play a move like bishop b1, which we've spoken about earlier? Somewhat takes the sting out of this move. Do I want to play b3, which somewhat takes the sting out of this move as well? Lots of options, but no clear solution. Such is life, such is chess. We have to proceed. Okay, and it's good to have a goal in mind. I think the goal is to get our pieces to good squares. Good squares, I think, constitute this C file for rooks. Good squares constitutes, the queen getting somewhere a little bit better. I think the queen would like to be centralized. Here on d3 would be a nice example of where it might like to sit. And sure, this bishop's not doing much, but it's also not under any immediate attack as of yet, and it's fine where it is. I think I'm happy to let it go and instead focus on getting the rest of my pieces to good squares. So with that in mind, there is queen c2. The threat there's no real threat. No real threat there. If he plays this queen move, then we can attack. But he can just get his queen back to a safer square. We then retreat, and his queen is out. It's doing something. Could play a move like this, but I just feel like maybe even bishop b1 makes sense. It's a bit of a waiting move. It is a bit of a waiting move. I wonder if this move makes sense, just to take this square away from the queen. Also takes this square away from his bishop. That's nice for that reason. Don't like that he can play this in response. I don't think there's any way to prevent that, but at least what this does is it weakens this pawn. It starts committing him to queenside action. So after I come back, it's his move again in that scenario. I could then imagine this pawn stepping forward. And he's getting a lot of queenside action there. If I play a move like this, I am giving up this diagonal in so doing. He could then take this diagonal if he wished. This rook's not doing a lot. It's a difficult scenario. Rook e1 was a move. It's a potential move. And I can play these moves only when I'm forced to do so. That's potential as well. So rook e1 actually comes to mind. Okay, and I don't know what exactly he wants to do, but I think this would be a plan of his. I think that would be a plan of his. I'm going to play rook e1. If he plays this, then I'll come down, and sure, I'll never get my queen necessarily to d3. At least not yet. But maybe one day I will. And regardless, I can at least double my rooks up on this file now. have plans of doing so. I can have plans of playing e4. If I've made a mistake and I want my rook on f1, I can just go back and treat it as if it was a waiting move. Again, would Kramnik have played that move? Almost certainly not. I'm not Kramnik. Okay, so he's playing pretty quickly. That's totally fine. It's acceptable. Maybe he wants to open this up now. And, he's contesting the file. That's part of the reason why I have my rook here, is so that I can say, no, the file is mine. The file is mine. Do I want to retreat the bishop first? Do I want to take here? I don't think I want to take. I don't want to release that tension because his position's like an elastic band and it's just ready to go. Don't want to push him into doing that. So if I come back here, I don't think he's going to want to push this pawn. I don't think he's going to want to push that pawn. Regardless, taking doesn't help the situation in any real way. One thing I'm noticing now, though, is I could bring this bishop here where it pins his knight. And the bishop here is actually, looks like it's in a pretty good position. A, because it vacates the d3 square for my queen, but also because it's not easy for him to attack my bishop there. Not easy really at all. Now he can get straight out of that pin, however. He can get straight out of that pin. But then let's say I capture, well, he can take like this. Capture, he takes like this. Yeah, I don't want to give him the bishop pair unnecessarily like that. Now I think about it, one of the reasons that I played this move was so that e4 would become a possibility, and I actually think e4 is possible now. He has 1, 2, 3 ways to take, and I have 1, 2, 3 ways to defend. So if I push this move now, I think that's what I'm going to do. Giving my bishop the option of returning, opening up the center where I have a rook already, not just on the c file. This move can always be met like this. This move can still be met like this. It's a game of give and take. I mean, I'm trying to do my best, obviously. But if he takes, and then let's say a take with knight. If he takes, I take, he takes, bringing another piece in. So actually, I might have made a mistake there. I think I made a mistake there. And honestly, did I calculate it before I played it? No, not really. I just counted pieces. Counting pieces has its drawbacks. So this is one of them. If he takes, maybe then I have to take here. Then if he takes bishop, I can take this bishop. And that would be good. So I think that's what I have to do. If he takes, I think I have to take here. But then he just comes back. If he takes, I could also push this pawn. But that would be a piece sacrifice. A pawn and piece sacrifice. This is not good. I think I made a mistake. e4, I'm not happy with it. I could be wrong. Maybe it was the best move and I'm just seeing it in a wrong fashion, but I need, regardless, to come up with a plan now. A response to him taking, which should have been the very first thing I calculated. If he takes, what if I take with the bishop, hitting his bishop? Well, if I do that, he can take my bishop. Let's say he takes bishop with his bishop. I take back. Then if he takes, then I don't just like taking because he's going to take the bishop at the end of it. Which means if he takes, take, 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 I might have to take this bishop first forcing him to recapture with the queen. And then maybe playing a move like this, bringing this knight back to attack this guy again. He'll be able to play this, but then I can play this. Eventually possibly winning back either the piece or most of the piece, but weakening my position, weakening my position. This is now getting really complex. And I believe I've given away my advantage. We're no longer equal. He's winning. And the funny thing is, even though he's a 1799 rated player, essentially an 1800 rated player, he's not winning because of anything he's done. He's winning because of what I've done. I am winning for him, which is not good. I mean, e4, I should have calculated this a bit better. I don't think it really works. It's probably not as bad as I'm making it out to seem. But given that this bishop is as loose as it is, and given that the capture comes with tempo, this should have been calculated by me before I played. Anyway, we have to consider what to do now. If takes, take with the bishop. What if he takes with the knight? If he takes with the knight, I think we take the bishop and hit his queen. He can then take our knight, hit our queen. This is just very complex. I think if he takes, taking the knight might make most sense, just to get rid of this loose piece, first and foremost. What I do like about that is, in that scenario, in that immediate picture snapshot of the position, he's taken a pawn, but I've taken a knight. So that's going really well for me. If we continue that projection, he can take bishop, I can take bishop, that's still good for me. Then were he to take bishop, I could take bishop, and that's still good for me, hypothetically. Although I'm also seeing that in that scenario, my rook would be able to take the queen. So I think that if he takes, I'm going to take the knight. And I would imagine he would then recapture with his knight, re-establishing this fork that's going on. And then I would take. And I think then we're okay. So if he takes, I take. If he takes that, I take this. And we should be fine. So I think that's going to be my plan after he takes e4, is to take the knight, get rid of this loose piece. Just get rid of it. Take it. Take something while you can. In other words, take something while you can. And then try and recapture the pawn. Now, any other moves on the table, something like this, I think I just retreat the bishop and the situation remains much the same. Okay, so he's taken, but he's taken with the knight, immediately opening up the attack on my loose piece. Okay, good move. Good move, I think. I think that's a good move. Now I could take the knight. I could take the knight, and that actually defends my loose piece temporarily. Of course, though, he takes the knight, my piece is loose again. But what I can do there is take the bishop, hitting his queen recaptures. Then his queen and his bishop both defend the pawn here, which in turn attacks both of these pieces. I could take, he would have to take with his bishop, because his queen will be here. Then I can jump my knight down over this area of the board. My knight there will attack his bishop, as will my rook. He's not going to be defending that bishop by anything other than the queen. He can bring a rook to defend. but I'm going to have this pawn move. Even if he does defend the bishop with the pawn, I'm going to have this pawn move. So I think that's what I'm going to have to do. So take, basically that forces him to recapture with the pawn. Then, what if I then take the pawn? He would take this. We don't want to allow. So take, he takes, take, he takes. And then actually, that's actually okay. It's actually okay because with his queen here, even though the pawn forks both of these pieces, he's unable to take them because of the pin against the queen. So it's complex, but I think I'm okay. I don't think I'm winning. Okay, so he took, and I take his bishop. Now the pin is in effect, so he cannot take this. It's that simple. But what I could potentially think of doing is still going through with a plan like this. Even if he wants to take this pawn, I then can take this pawn. And there can be benefit to an idea like that. It could be this idea. Maybe I should take this pawn first, but then he gets his knight onto a beautiful square, attacking my bishop and defending this pawn again, which we don't necessarily want to allow. There's this move to further attack the pawn, but then he has either this response, this response, this response. He has a lot of ways to defend the pawn. So I do this, and he does something like this. Then take, 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 take. Yeah, this is this is interesting. This is very interesting indeed. Let's look for something here. It is possible to simply move the bishop back. Okay, that's possible. And therefore I'm defending the queen. The queen defends the pawn one more time. And he can't play this still, of course. So whatever he does on his next move, I'll be able to move my knight away, but clearly I'm taking up a very passive position here. If I choose to play this way, what would he do though? What in practical terms would he actually do after this move? Probably a move like this. Then I would be threatening though to get a pass pawn, which would certainly be interesting. Possibly no good. So, but it's one reason why he might then choose to take this. But if he takes that, we take back in one way or other, perhaps after taking a rook off the table, or perhaps not. I don't mind this. There's also this, align ourselves with the king. This move itself would, he would take with the bishop. Then there is this move. So does this work? If we take a pawn, then attack a bishop. Firstly, he can just recapture the pawn, but if he does that, we're going to take the bishop. So we take and he takes, and then we come here. I think he needs to defend that bishop. Let's say through a move like this. That weakens his king, without doubt. I'm actually considering this move right now. I take the pawn. He takes bishop. That's good for him. He's up 2 points of material. I can come here then. He can come here. I can come here. He can come here. I can come here. Ultimately, he takes the pawn. He's up 3 points of material. I somewhat think that's good for me. But rather than taking and then playing my knight here, why not just play my knight here immediately? If he takes, I can sort of say, so what? Can I not just say, so what? Just take this pawn, hitting his bishop. And if he takes back, yeah, this is a really complex position for a player such as myself. I guess the difference is if I take with the bishop first, he doesn't have time to take here, thereby creating for himself a passed pawn. But he goes ahead in material. If I do this and he takes, I think I would take with the knight. Wow, I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. Do I know what not to do? I think I don't want to take this. Do I want to take this? Something tells me this is not right. Perhaps a move like this. Doesn't seem right either. Perhaps a move like this. Perhaps that's the way to go. Developing the queen, staking claim to that open file, threatening just to capture a pawn. That could be a good way to go. You can defend the queen. You can defend the pawn. Let's say he defends the queen. Still not enough of a defense. Still not enough of a defense. And yeah, even if he does do that, if he takes there, would I want to take? Would I need this knight to be here so that it can come there? Just not sure. This is a big move. If he doesn't take, then I'm immediately threatening check and win the queen. So he has to take. Hey, maybe there's this. This is tricky, I think, because then I'm threatening to take. If he takes back, I can have the rook over here as well. I don't think that's really changing a whole lot. There's this move, just ignoring everything and attacking this pawn. But even if I were to attack that pawn, he just attacks back and traps my queen. Not really because of his bishop. So there is this move and just like saying, look, you still can't take these pieces, so I don't care about them. In the meantime, you can't take this either, so I don't care about it. In the meantime, I'm going to come here and create a new threat. And how do you deal with it? If you do this, well, then I can take a pawn. Sort of, not really, though. I guess if you do this, I can do this, but again, sort of not really, though. So in response to a move like that, I don't love that. I could just ignore everything and play a4. But what's the point? What does he want? Does he want to take this? I don't think so. He probably wants to move his queen or defend his queen. Probably wants to move his queen. If he moves his queen there, like say I do a random move and he moves his queen here, am I then screwed? No, because then I can take the pawn. So yeah, this is interesting. I think I don't have to rush anything. This is a move that doesn't rush anything. It does allow him to respond in a number of ways. This is also a move that doesn't rush. Don't mind it. This move doesn't rush, it just waits. This move waits. It also creates a bit of safety, as well as a bit of a weakness, potentially. But I like that it makes this move possible too. Been wanting to play this since I played Rook AC1. I'm going to get low on time unless I do something. So I'm going to play that. It's going to be an interesting move to go back and have a look at. I am a pawn down, and I guess that was what I was initially thinking was, could I take that pawn and be equal? He takes the bishop. Do I actually win that bishop back? Well, I may win the bishop back, but I'd probably lose another pawn in so doing. So I'm down a pawn, and I think that's as a result of me playing the move e4, which, as I said at the time, was probably a mistake, and I should have been able to do better. But I don't think my position is anywhere near lost. The game is on. The game is definitely still on. And it's still possible for me to do well, both in terms of playing well and in terms of a result, either being a draw or a win. Or if I'm going to lose, then drawing out the loss process, and making it difficult for him. We've got 19 minutes on the clock. There's no increment. So I normally always play with an increment. I'm not used to playing without one. Just means I'm going to have to be a little bit quicker. So what is my plan? I somewhat like this plan. Putting the rook here and trying to get it over to here and putting the queen here. Yeah. That's kind of the plan I like. And then I can always add pressure by doing this and this, and ultimately trying to get the pawn back, trying to open up the center, possibly then trying to go for a mating attack, who knows. He now can't play this move with his pawn, so I'm not upset to see that, but he has taken away the possibility of me creating this passed pawn. Now I can take if I wish. I can also settle my knight up here if I wish. So those are possibilities. There's also this move, which is possible now, but his knight does a good job just generally defending. Like I said, I'm going to play pretty quickly now. This is my plan. Bring the rook over. And then I can put a queen somewhere here. If he takes, I can take back. If he takes, I take back and ruin my pawns, which I don't necessarily want to do. So I think if he takes, I might take first, giving him that file, and then take back. And I certainly have to be very careful of him pinning my rook, my knight to my queen. I have to be very careful about that. Yeah, so maybe if he takes, I'll take with my queen. That might be the better option there. But I do have to play a bit quicker. I spent a lot of time on that previous move. Okay. So in a way, my bishop doesn't look that good right now, but if I can increase the pressure on this pawn, and I have ways to do it, like I can do this, 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 and this, 4 moves to increase the pressure on the pawn. As far as I can tell, he can only defend it better with 1 move. I should be able to swoop back on in at some point, pick that pawn up. Hopefully. Depends on, of course, how he plays. He's got a long time to think. I think this move is a move that has to be considered. I think I'm just going to take with the queen. Don't see a reason to not do that. You know, if he were to move his bishop onto this diagonal, I would create a passed pawn. I think. Not sure about that, but I think I would. Maybe I would just take. Though that lets him take control of some central files. Okay. That's not a bad move. Not a bad move. Now, if he takes there, he's saying what he wants me to have to recapture. But if he takes, I still just take this. I'm not necessarily afraid of that. What about a move like this? If I get rid of this knight, that might be a nice way to regather this pawn. This is a gigantically weakening move in terms of my king safety. I might want to get my king a bit of breathing room in regards to a back rank, potential back rank mate in the future. What I may also want to do is develop my queen. Developing the queen now drops a pawn. Take. Well, it doesn't. It's going to win this pawn at the same time. But I don't think we want to necessarily do that. Could just continue with my plan of putting a rook here, because this pawn is defended to a certain extent. It's a bit shaky though, because if he takes, I have to take with my knight, and my knight is pinned to the queen, but also has to stay there to defend the knight. So if I come here, take, what if he then plays just a simple move like this? He's going to then have 2 things attacking my knight. I've only got 1 defender. Well, this brings me to another idea, is I could bring the rook to defend this pawn. He still can't take because of that pin. if I were to play this move, if he plays this, attacking my rook, then I can come here and he's lost an important attacker at this point. So I think that would be actually fine. Very fine. So this is interesting, because what would he do now? Yeah, he could attack that rook anyway. You know, maybe therefore I should play something like this so that I can then get the bishop back in the game that way. Yeah, this is interesting. I don't think I'm doing particularly well. This move is interesting. He can attack me. I can come back. I think that's what I might actually do. It feels very odd to play this move. It feels very odd. But I do want to defend this pawn. It might become a dangerous pawn. I know I'm blocking my bishop again, but I've always got this move. And slowly make my way over to here is the thought behind that move. You know, there was also an instinct to stay opposing this rook for some reason, staying on this c file, but it's also possible that this becomes a passed pawn and this file actually is not the optimal file for the rook. Maybe the d file is better, I'm not 100% sure. Again, I'm trying to do my best. I've got 15 minutes left on the clock and no increment. So I'm going to have to start accepting time-limited decisions here. What's he going to do? I don't think he can just take a rook and give up his queen. If he defends his queen, however, it's still not really that well defended. I can still just play something like this. Or something like this. And any capture of that knight is met by taking queen. And you get a knight and a queen, possibly even a pawn and a rook. So he might get these three for his queen, which, you know, probably would be good for him. Probably would be good for him. Will he take up residence on this square? Maybe. I just don't know. I just don't know. You know, I feel like this guy right now. Yeah, the road to chess mastery. Chess is not an easy game to master. I've been trying, still haven't been able to do it. Not even close. So what comes next? What comes next? Yeah, he's done a good job of putting his pieces on easy squares. Why haven't I not been able to do the same thing? Why am I not just doing what he's doing? It's gonna be an interesting game to analyze once it's all said and done. At least I'm making him think, you know, he's not having an immediate move come to mind. Said he could attack my rook. If he attacks the rook, my thought was initially either this or this. I think this is probably the better way to go. And if you take this, yeah, then I have to move the rook again. Not necessarily. I could take here. Could take here, and then this move could be met with this. Not really. Yeah, so I think if this, I might actually have to play this. Yeah, this is it. Okay, he's moved away in a very, very solid fashion, fashion that I should have seen. But if he moves the bloody queen, then obviously these two just end up forked. Well and truly forked. So he's giving me the opportunity to get a pass pawn, but it's going to cost me a rook. Or I move the rook, lose the knight. It's probably not fantastic either. So this is now resignable, in fact. Completely resignable. I'm basically ashamed at how poorly I've played this. If I come here and he takes this, no, there's absolutely nothing going. There is nothing going here. There is nothing going here at all. I mean, come on, Michael. What is that? What is this? Yeah, sure, his queen's pinned. Most natural thing to think about is, okay, what if he moves the queen somewhere? Well, if he moves the queen somewhere, then I'm fucked. Spelled F-O-R-K-E-D, forked. Is there anything I can do? Is it worth playing on? Gonna be a clean piece down, a piece and a pawn. No real prospects. What if I take this pawn? It's hopeless. It's absolutely hopeless. You know, if his knight wasn't there and his rook wasn't there, maybe there'd be an opportunity here for a back rank mate. Given the way things are, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So given that that's the reality of the situation, I think we can just resign. Is there any way we can get a back rank happening? No. There's not. Might as well take pawn. Not too crash hot. Not too crash hot at all. Okay. There is nothing. There's nothing here at all. Going for a swindle. I gave this game to him on a silver platter. He didn't have to do anything to earn this game. E4, rook d3. I think other than that, it was okay. 3 other moves I played. I mean, clearly I'm just speculating here and it's a bit of a waste of time. I don't even want to take, because I need to be able to dislodge that knight if I have half a chance in hell of doing anything whatsoever. You know, this is what I'd like. And that would work if this knight wasn't there. But I have absolutely no way of dislodging this knight. So it's possible he'll move it on his own. No, I'm resigning. Okay, well, at least I didn't lose too many rating points, given that he was higher rated than I was. Basically, it says I've made 2 mistakes, which is kind of what I thought. You know, the first mistake I thought was this, e4. I think that was a mistake. And I also think that this rook d3 was also a mistake. I've had plenty of time to think about the game already, spoke about it all as we went. Let's just see whether those 2 moves were in fact the incorrect moves. And maybe try and get a couple of other ideas out of the game. We've helped him to reach his 1800 goal, assuming that was a goal of his. So e4 was in fact a mistake. Rook c3 in itself was a mistake, and certainly rook d3 was also a mistake. But rook c3 was also a mistake. Here we should have actually taken, but we were already losing so badly after e4. I mean, before e4, we were doing fine. Before e4, things were absolutely fine. It says this move, which I did consider. The reason I didn't like this move was because of this. But now it's saying knight b5 to attack that rook. And it's saying the rook should go back. But if he plays the rook forward, then he's dropping a pawn with a tempo on the rook. Okay, so maybe this was not as bad as I thought. Yeah, sure, he gets out of the pin. Unable to think 2 moves ahead. Unable. If I'd thought of him coming here, maybe, you know, what would happen then? Could I take a knight and then jump another knight here? Or do I just play knight e5 immediately? Play knight e5 straight away, attacking that rook. And if knight takes, pawn takes, then knight e8, and you get to trade the bishops. And then what, f4? Yeah, f4 or knight takes d5. Tempo on the queen. What's the issue with f4? It makes long-term weakness, I suppose. It's just not as good after queen knight c7, defending this pawn. But yeah, it does defend the pawn, because if you take, then he's going to come in with the rook move, I suppose. No. Oh, sorry, his knight, his queen. Yeah. He takes that. Now there's f4. Or wouldn't f4 just give away a bishop? So it's saying queen h5. That's a nice move. That's a really nice move. Then g6. Bishop takes g6. Oh, that's really nice. If he takes the knight, then there's check, and you win the queen. If he does, something random, there's mate. And if he defends the mate like this, you can take defending the knight, defending the queen, attacking the queen. If he defends like this, you take with check, and regardless of how he recaptures, you follow it up with mate. So that was a beautiful move. So yeah, I mean, that would have been a better move, and I did consider that in the game. But I just thought, hey, I can pin the knight to his rook, and the bishop's fairly unstable. Fairly stable. The only way he would be able to deal with it is to make weaknesses in his position. All really good things, and even then it can still always come back to its safe square on b1. It also makes way for the queen, so there was a lot of good things about this move. I dismissed all of those good things purely on the basis that he can get out of the pin. He can get out of the pin. No thought about how I can then respond with, maybe further attacking the rook. Or, if he comes here, that I can then proceed with knight e5, attacking him again. And then after captures, and this guy moves, I get to take. And then after takes, there's this guy hanging. I didn't think about these things, and it's quite frustrating. Quite frustrating. Well, let's go back to the start of the game. d4, all book moves. So, that's all fine. All fine. That's fine. All completely fine. Yep, all fine. Mistake. And it's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. So I was doing well, and I thought about a good move here, didn't play it, opted instead for the mistake move. What about the move h3 here, which was another thing I was considering? Looks like it's not too bad. It might not have been as good, but still a lot better than what I actually did in the game. Alternatively, this move, again, not too bad, somewhat equal, but no longer an advantage. Taking probably wouldn't have even been too bad. That's not too bad. But the move I played, just hopeless. Hopeless. Okay, well, after that, even after that, I made mistakes. So taking with the knight was inaccurate. I should have taken this guy. Why is that? Because now after he takes, why would it have been better to take this? Because then queen takes, and what, you can take this pawn? No. You play bishop b1, or you play queen a4. But I'm still much worse here. I'm still worse. But here I'm so far worse. So far worse. And after this move, it's a joke. It's just a joke. And the joke just keeps on getting worse and worse and worse. So here I should have taken. I would have expected him. Well, I suppose he can take back, yes. And after takes and queen takes, you know, I am worse, considerably worse. Once you're in a position like that, it's really, really hard to get back. And yeah, e4, e4, and the queen's gambit declined. You know, he's fianchettoed his bishop to b7. He's got everything solid. There's no real threat behind b4, and he can simply take. Either capture was good. Either capture was good and led to a large advantage. And after this takes, you know, but particularly after this move. So I just played 2 hopeless moves, and that's all he needed to do. All he needed to do was for me to play 2 hopeless moves. And boom, he's up to 1800. Well, guys, that's it. Sorry to disappoint. This was a hopeless, hopeless game. I'm still above 1600. But, you know, the point of it is that it's a training game. And, you know, I played the Queen's Gambit. I probably tried to be over ambitious with e4. It was silly. I didn't think about it. I should have played the move bishop f5, which I considered at the time. I didn't go through with it because I wasn't willing to think ahead and say, well, if he gets out of the pin, what happens next? If I'd done that, hey, maybe I could have won this game. And at the very least, if I didn't give him the game on a silver platter twice, maybe 3 times, he probably wouldn't have been able to win, and it probably would have only been a draw that I could have held him to. Instead, he takes 4 extra points. His rating gets up to 1803. Congratulations. But definitely I'm going to be looking to do much better than that in the next training game and get this rating up to 1803. Till then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.